Do not turn your head, Ziva. If you turn back, they will see the tears you have spent years hiding. Ziva whispered these words to herself, standing at the very edge of the Kirin Pack's territory. The rain was cold, soaking through her thin tunic until it clung to her skin. Her small, mud-caked bag sat forgotten at her feet. Behind her, the heavy iron gates groaned shut, the sound echoing like a final, damning judgment. She's a Sigma, a mistake of the bloodline, a voice sneered from the high wall. It was Gavril, the Alpha's younger brother. He spat in her direction, the glob landing near her boots. Go find a human village to die in. Your wolf is a silent ghost. Ziva didn't respond. She couldn't. Her throat felt like it was filled with hot sand. In the world of werewolves, the hierarchy is everything. Alphas rule, betas command, and omegas serve. But Sigmas? As a Sigma, she was born with a perceived defect. To the pack, she was unintelligent, weak, a burden. She turned her head just enough to catch a glimpse of the Alpha, Malaki, standing on his high balcony. He was the leader, the strongest warrior, the one who was supposed to protect all pack members. But he didn't say a word. He just watched, his face a mask of indifference, as his beta tossed her few remaining belongings into the dirt. The Alpha's right hand was pushing her out, into the abyss. Ziva picked up her bag. Her inner wolf, the core of her werewolf identity, was not awake yet. Most wolves feel their inner beast stir at 16, fully awakening by 18. She was nearly 18, but her wolf felt like a cold, lifeless stone inside her. She turned her back on the only home she'd ever known and walked into the dark forest. This was the land of rogues. Rogues were werewolves kicked out of their packs, often seen as villains, brutal and without honor. She was one of them now. She spent that first terrifying night huddled in a hollowed-out tree, her body shaking uncontrollably from the cold and the fear. Every snap of a twig, every rustle of leaves had her checking the shadows for predators. Without a pack, she had no protection. She was completely, utterly alone. The weeks that followed passed in a miserable blur of hunger and exhaustion. Ziva eventually found a small, run-down town nestled near the mountains. Her ribs were bruised from a fall, but she didn't go to a doctor. Werewolves didn't need human medicine. Their wolves healed them. And even though her own wolf was silent, she could feel the slow, painful knit of her bones mending over time. She found work scrubbing floors at a local tavern, earning just enough for scraps of food. It was a miserable existence, but she was surviving. One evening, while she was on her knees mopping up spilled ale, her skin began to burn. A strange heat spread from her chest outwards. It was her 18th birthday. The air in the hot kitchen suddenly turned thick, heavy. A sweet, almost overwhelming scent began to pour from her skin. It was the Sigma hormone, a scent that could drive male wolves into a desperate, uncontrollable frenzy. Ziva felt her temperature skyrocket. Her heat cycle was starting. Hide. A voice echoed deep in her mind. It wasn't her own thought. It was deep, ancient, and carried the weight of stone. She dropped the mop with a clatter and scrambled to the back storage room, her heart hammering against her ribs. She curled into a tight ball in the corner, tucking her arms over her head, a natural, primal instinct for a Sigma when they feel scared or threatened. The back door of the tavern exploded inwards, splintering under the force of a powerful kick. I smell her, a rough voice growled. It's a Sigma. She's a runaway or a slave. Two men, their forms bulky in the dim light, stepped into the storage room. They were not from her old pack. They were rogues. Their eyes were bloodshot and wild with a maddening hunger. The Sigma pheromone was acting like a hypnotic drug on them, overriding all reason. Please, Ziva whimpered, her voice small and trembling. Just leave me alone. You're coming with us, little wolf? The larger rogue sneered, reaching a grimy hand for her hair. Just as his fingers were about to touch her, Ziva felt a spark ignite in her chest. No, not a spark. It was a roar, a cataclysm. Her inner wolf didn't just wake up. It exploded into being. She didn't shift into a massive, snarling beast. She stayed small, curled on the floor. But her eyes, once a simple brown, flared into a piercing, glowing violet. The weakness, the fear, it all evaporated. I said, Ziva whispered, but her voice was no longer small. It was steady, calm, and laced with an undeniable power. Leave me alone. The rogues froze instantly. The hypnotic command in her voice hit them like a physical wall. They blinked, their crazed expressions turning blank and hollow, like puppets whose strings had been cut. Go to the town guard, Ziva commanded, her violet eyes holding them captive. Tell them you have hunted the innocent. Do not leave until they chain you. Without a word, the two men turned in perfect unison. They walked out of the tavern like wooden dolls, their steps stiff and unnatural, on their way to confess their crimes. Ziva slumped against the wall, panting, her body still radiating intense heat. That's when she heard it. A slow, rhythmic clapping coming from the shadows. A man stood in the ruined doorway. He was taller than any alpha she had ever seen, carrying himself with a terrifying, predatory grace. He wasn't a normal wolf. He felt superior, like a king. That was quite a performance for a defective girl, the man said, his voice a low rumble. Ziva pushed herself to her feet, wiping the sweat from her forehead. Who are you? The man stepped fully into the light. His eyes weren't red or brown. They were gold, molten gold, like the sun. I am Eleazar, and you, Ziva, are the first wolf to ever make me feel a mate bond. A sharp, sudden ache flared in Ziva's chest. It was the bond, the fated connection the moon goddess bestowed. This man was her mate, but Eleazar wasn't a pack wolf. He was something else, something far more ancient and powerful. You're a Lycan, Ziva breathed, the realization dawning on her. I am the king of alphas, Eleazar replied, his golden eyes drifting to the faded marks on her wrists, remnants of her time as a pack outcast. And I think it is time someone taught your old alpha what happens when you throw away a queen. Ziva looked down at her own hands. They were steady, the trembling was gone. I don't need a king to fight for me. A sharp, dangerous grin spread across Eleazar's face. I know you don't. That's why I want to watch you do it. Ziva took a step forward, closing the distance between them. If you want to stay near me, Eleazar, you follow my lead. You're staring, Eleazar, Ziva said, her voice cutting through the damp air of the storage room. The Lycan King didn't look away. He leaned against the doorframe, his golden eyes tracking her every move as she straightened her tunic. It's rare to see a Sigma stand so tall after a heat cycle begins, he remarked calmly. Most of your kind would be hiding, arms over their heads, waiting for the danger to pass. Ziva felt the heat still simmering in her blood, but she refused to tremble. She was done being the weak, unintelligent girl they all thought she was. She looked at the empty doorway where the rogues had walked out to their doom. I'm not most of my kind, she replied. She stepped toward him, watching him, challenging him. And you should be careful. My pheromones are at their peak, unless you want to end up like those rogues, walking into a cage on my command. Thank you for watching. This is just the beginning of Ziva's story. If you want to see what happens next, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And don't forget to like, comment, and share this video. We'll see you in the next one.
Eleazar let out a low, rumbling chuckle. I am a Lycan, Ziva. I have the ability to project my own emotions onto others. Your scent is powerful, but my will is stronger. Besides, the mate bond the moon goddess gave us makes me immune to your tricks. Ziva felt a sharp pang of annoyance. Werewolves believed the mate bond was sacred and designated by the moon goddess herself. But she had been cast out like trash by her own bloodline. She did not trust destiny. The moon goddess may choose a mate, but I am not a puppet, Ziva said. She walked past him into the kitchen of the tavern. I have things to do. I need to gather my strength. You need to eat, Eleazar said, following her. Werewolves don't need medicine because their wolves heal them. But you are burning through energy faster than a warrior in training. Ziva ignored him and reached for a loaf of bread on the counter. Suddenly, a sharp pain shot through her mind. It was a mind blink, a conversation between wolves in their heads. But this wasn't Eleazar. It was distant, cold, and familiar. Ziva. Where are you? The voice belonged to Malachi, her former alpha. The pack is under attack, Ziva. The rogues have gathered into a massive rogue pack. They are at our borders. They are looking for the Sigma. Ziva gripped the edge of the table. Rogues were often the villains in the stories of the regular packs. She had been gone for weeks, yet they were hunting her. She realized her scent was a weapon they wanted to use against other alphas. What is it? Eleazar asked. His playful tone vanished. He could sense her shift in mood because Lycans are more complex and aware of emotional connections. My old pack, Ziva whispered. Malachi is calling me through the link. He's desperate. The rogues are using silver bombs. My people are dying. They are not your people anymore, Eleazar reminded her. They kicked you out to fend for yourself on the streets. Ziva looked at her hands. She thought about the Omegas, the common people who were the lowest rank in the pack. She thought about the pups who were being educated by the Thetas. They didn't deserve to be slaughtered because of an Alpha's pride. I don't care about Malachi, Ziva said, her violet eyes glowing with a new intensity. But the pack is family. If the rogues take the territory, they will turn the young ones into slaves. I won't let that happen. You want to go back? Eleazar asked. He straightened up, his presence filling the room. You are a Sigma. They will see you as meager and poor. They will try to bully you again. Ziva turned to face him. She felt the power of her wolf finally waking up. A strength that determined how unique she truly was. Let them try, Ziva said. I have a bite that is difficult for any werewolf to heal from. And I have a voice that can make an army stop in its tracks. Eleazar watched her for a moment. He saw the fire-bonded spirit in her eyes. Then we go. But I am not going as your protector, Ziva. I am going as your witness. Ziva grabbed a heavy cloak to hide her scent as much as possible. She knew that even though she was a Sigma, she could run fast in both human and wolf form when she was determined. As they stepped out into the night, the rain had turned into a light mist. The moon goddess hung large and silver in the sky. Malachi thinks he is calling back a victim, Ziva said as she began to run toward the Karen pack borders. And what is he actually calling back? Eleazar asked, keeping pace with her effortlessly. His replacement, Ziva replied. Do you hear that, Eleazar? The sound of silver breaking against bone, Ziva said, her breath hitching as they reached the ridge overlooking the Karen pack valley. Below them the scene was chaos. The rogue pack had breached the outer walls, using silver bombs that released metallic clouds to weaken the defenders. Werewolves usually heal their own wounds without medicine, but silver slows their strength and makes them vulnerable. Ziva could see her former packmates stumbling, their movements sluggish and pained. They are using silver weapons to destroy their opponents, Eleazar observed, his golden eyes narrowing as he watched the battle from the heights. Your Alpha is losing his grip. Ziva didn't wait for his permission. She began the descent, her body moving with the incredible speed of a Sigma in both human and wolf form. As she ran, she felt the rigid class hierarchy of her old life crumbling in her mind. The Alphas and Betas, once so dominant, were now being hunted like prey by the very rogues they had once cast out. She reached the village square just as a group of rogues cornered a group of terrified pups and their Theta teacher. The rogues raised silver-tipped spears, their faces twisted with vengeance. Stop! Ziva commanded. The word didn't just leave her mouth. It rippled through the air like a physical wave. The rogues froze, their eyes glazing over instantly. The hypnotic pheromones of her Sigma state, intensified by her 18th birthday, acted like a drug on their minds. Drop your weapons and turn your backs to the children, Ziva said, her voice dropping to a low melodic hum. The rogues obeyed in silence, their spears clattering onto the cobblestones. The Theta teacher looked up, her eyes widening as she recognized the girl the pack had called a defective mistake. Ziva, the teacher whispered, clutching a pup to her chest. How are you doing this? I am using the gift you all tried to throw away, Ziva replied, her violet eyes glowing. Suddenly a roar echoed from the Alpha's house. Malachi the Alpha emerged. He was covered in blood and burns from silver concentration. He looked at Ziva, then at the Lycan King stepping out of the shadows behind her. You brought a Lycan to our lands? Malachi spat, though he could barely stand. You are a traitor as well as a defect. I am the reason your pups are still breathing, Malachi, Ziva said, stepping over a silver bomb casing. The rogues are not here for your land. They are here for me because they know a Sigma's hypnotic power is worth more than a dozen Alphas. She is right, Eleazar said, his voice projecting a calm authority that made the surrounding wolves bow their heads instinctively. But she is not a tool for you to use. She is a fated mate to a king. Malachi's face paled. A mate bond is sacred, and the thought of a worthless Sigma being mated to a Lycan king shattered his understanding of bloodline inheritance. I won't let a rogue pack take what is mine, Malachi growled, trying to shift. But his wolf was weakened by the silver in the air. Then step aside, Ziva said, her voice turning sharp and cold. Because I am going to end this siege, and I am not doing it for you. Ziva turned her attention to the main gate where the largest group of rogues was gathered. She could smell their hunger and their hate. She knew she could bite hard, and a Sigma's bite was almost impossible for other wolves to heal. Eleazar, stay back, Ziva warned. If they see a Lycan, they will fight to the death. If they see me, they will think they've won. And that is when I'll own them. Your confidence is as intoxicating as your scent, Ziva, Eleazar replied with a smirk. Look at me, you monsters, and see the prize you've been hunting, Ziva shouted, her voice cutting through the smoke of the silver bombs. She stepped into the center of the main gate, her small frame silhouetted against the moonlight. The rogue pack, a gathering of wolves who belonged to no regular pack, stopped their advance. They were physically strong and gregarious, but their eyes widened as the Sigma pheromones reached them. To them, she smelled like the ultimate victory, but they did not know her wolf had finally woken up. It is the girl, one of the rogue leaders growled, his eyes turning a frenzied red. The alpha of Karen threw her away like a broken toy. Now she will be ours. Ziva felt the heat in her blood reach its peak, a cycle that occurred every 6 weeks and lasted for 7 days. The pain was high, and she could not control her rising body temperature, but she channeled that agony into her voice. She was not the unintelligent or weak creature they expected. You think I am a slave to be trafficked? Ziva asked, her voice dropping into that hypnotic low frequency. You think I am a meager thing to be bullied? The rogues hesitated. The hypnotic effect began to take hold, a power that could make another person do whatever she wanted. Their weapons lowered. Their aggressive snarls turned into confused whimpers. Behind her, Eleazar watched, his presence as the king of alphas projecting a calm that influenced those around him. Drop your silver blades, Ziva commanded, her violet eyes burning. Kneel in the mud and forget the names of your masters. Across the courtyard, hundreds of rogues fell to their knees at once. The sound of metal hitting the dirt was deafening. Ziva felt the strain on her mind, but she stood her ground. She knew that if she failed, she would be cast out again or worse. Suddenly, a rogue who had been hiding in the shadows lunged at her. He was immune to her voice because he had plugged his ears with thick wax. He swung a heavy silver chain, meant to subdue a wolf's strength. Before Eleazar could move, Ziva blurred. She used her superior speed in human form to dodge the chain. She didn't need to shift. She grabbed the rogue's arm and bit down on his shoulder with all her might. The man screamed. A Sigma's bite is incredibly difficult for other werewolves to heal from, and he collapsed instantly, clutching the wound that would likely never close. Does anyone else wish to test the defective girl? Ziva asked, looking over the kneeling army. Silence followed. Even Malachi, the alpha of the Karen pack, looked on in terror. He realized that the hierarchy he believed was rigid and platonic was being rewritten by a girl he had once called an Omega. They are yours now, Ziva, Eleazar said, walking toward her. He looked at the defeated army. The moon goddess did not just give me a mate. She gave the world a new law. Ziva looked at Malachi, who was still weakened by the silver concentration. She felt no pity for him. I am not a member of your pack, Malachi, Ziva stated, her voice echoing off the stone walls. And these rogues are no longer a threat to you, because they belong to me. Do you think a crown of silver will make you more of a king, Malachi, or just a heavier target? Ziva asked, her eyes fixed on the trembling alpha. Malachi leaned against the stone pillar of his ancestral home, his breathing ragged from the silver concentration in the air. He looked at the hundreds of rogues kneeling behind Ziva, their wills shattered by her hypnotic command. He then looked at Eleazar, the Lycan King, who stood like an immovable mountain at her side. You cannot lead them, Ziva, Malachi wheezed, his voice laced with the remnants of pack authority. The hierarchy is platonic and rigid. Bloodline inheritance says only an alpha can command. You are a Sigma, a defect born to be a slave. Ziva stepped closer, her speed blurring as she closed the distance. She grabbed the silver-tipped collar Malachi wore as a symbol of his rank and ripped it from his neck. The moon goddess blessed us, but we are not puppets. I have my own preferences and my own hate. And right now I hate the world you built. The pack needs a leader, Abeda stammered, stepping forward with his head bowed. The rogues have destroyed our food stores and poisoned our water with wolfsbane. Ziva turned to the kneeling rogue army. Her inner wolf was now fully awake, and she felt the unique strength it gave her. You wanted to hunt a Sigma? Now you will hunt for this pack. You will rebuild these walls. If any of you resists, my bite will be the last thing you feel, and you know it will never heal. The rogues bowed lower, their foreheads touching the cold mud. Eleazar stepped forward, his golden eyes projecting an aura of calm that settled over the terrified Omegas and warriors. A Lycan retains human memories and strategies even in wolf form. I have seen empires rise and fall, Malachi. You fell because you mistook kindness for weakness and a Sigma for a slave. Ziva felt the mate bond between her and Eleazar ache, a deep physical pulling that designated them as pairs for life. But she did not lean into him. She stood alone as sovereign power. Malachi, you are hereby cast out, Ziva declared. You are now a rogue. Take your brother Gavriel and leave these lands before the sun rises. If I see you again, I will not use my voice. I will use my teeth. The former Alpha looked at his own people, the Omegas and Betas he had ruled with an iron hand. None of them looked up to help him. They only looked at Ziva, the girl who could command their enemies with a whisper. Where will we go? Gavriel hissed, his face pale with fear. To the streets where you sent me, Ziva replied, her voice cold and final. As the disgraced brothers slunk away into the forest, Eleazar placed a hand on Ziva's shoulder. You have a pack now, Ziva. And an army. But a Sigma's heat cycle lasts for a week. You are burning with fever. Ziva leaned back against him for the first time, her body temperature indeed rising to a dangerous level. I am fine, Eleazar. I have a pack to protect and a new hierarchy to write. And what is the first law of Ziva's pack? Eleazar asked with a smile. Ziva looked at the children and the warriors who were watching her with newfound respect. The first law is that no wolf is born a slave, Ziva said. Do not think for a moment that because I am a woman, my mercy is an invitation to rebellion, Ziva said, her voice echoing through the hollowed-out stone hall of the Alpha's former residence. She sat in the heavy oak chair, her body trembling with the heat cycle that occurred every 6 weeks. The high fever made the world blur at the edges, but she kept her back straight. Before her stood the survivors of the Karen pack and the kneeling rogues. They were now physically bound to her command, yet she could see the doubt in their eyes. The rogues are good or bad based on their choices, not just their status, Ziva continued, looking at a former rogue who had spent years being hunted for vengeance. But under my rule, you will not kill for sport or steal sheep just to waste them. You will work. Ziva, you are pushing yourself too hard, Eleazar said, stepping out from the shadows. As a Lycan, he could project his own emotions onto her, and right now he was projecting a sense of calm and cooling relief. Ziva looked at the Lycan King. He was far more superior than any Alpha she had ever known. I have spent 18 years being the lowest rank, Eleazar. I will not spend my first day as leader hiding because of a fever. Suddenly, the heavy doors of the hall burst open. A group of warriors entered, carrying silver weapons that glowed with a dull, threatening light. They were not from the Karen pack. These were Epsilons and Gammas from a neighboring territory, led by an Alpha who looked as though he had stepped out of an ancient war. We heard the Karen pack had fallen to a Sigma and a rogue army, the new Alpha growled. I am Alpha Barak. I have come to reclaim this land for the true bloodline. Ziva stood up despite the pain in her limbs. The bloodline inheritance you worship is what made this pack weak enough to be conquered. I didn't take this land. I saved it. Barak laughed, a sound like grinding stones. A Sigma's bite may be hard to heal, but you cannot bite all of us at once. And your hypnotic voice won't work if we simply don't listen. He pointed to the silver handcuffs hanging from his belt, designed to subdue a wolf's strength. Eleazar, stay back, Ziva warned, her violet eyes flashing. I am not here to fight your battles, Ziva, Eleazar replied, though his golden eyes tracked every move Barak made. But remember, you are a fire-bonded spirit. Use the warmth of your fever. Do not just endure it. Ziva felt the heat in her blood shift. It was no longer just a symptom of her Sigma nature. It became a weapon. She stepped down from the dais, her speed making her a blur of movement. Before Barak could raise his silver weapon, Ziva was in his space. She didn't use her voice. She used the hypnotic effect of her pheromones at close range, A scent so high and intoxicating it caused a hypnotic effect on the alpha, forcing him to freeze. "You think silver makes you a king?" Ziva whispered in his ear, her voice dripping with the power of her awakening wolf. "Silver only hurts those who are afraid of it." She grabbed the silver handcuffs from his belt and snapped them onto his own wrists with a sharp click. The alpha gasped as the silver began to weaken him instantly. "Go back to your pack, Barak," Ziva commanded, her voice now amplified by her wolf. "Tell them that the Karen pack is dead. In its place, the Sigma pack has risen." Barak stumbled back, his warriors looking at their shackled leader in horror. They realized that even though she was small and once deemed unintelligent, she was more complex and aware than any wolf they had encountered. "You are a monster," Barak hissed as his men began to retreat. "No," Ziva replied, watching them go. "I am just the consequence of your own cruelty. Do you truly believe a few silver shackles will hold back the tide of an ancient tradition, Ziva?" Eleazar asked, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the stone floor of the hall. Ziva leaned her head back against the cold masonry, her skin slick with the sweat of her ongoing heat cycle. "The shackles are a message, Eleazar. I am showing them that their own weapons of war, the silver they use to destroy their opponents, can be turned against them." She felt the mate bond between them pulse like a second heartbeat, a sacred connection designated by the moon goddess that made them ache for one another. "You are a fire-bonded spirit, but even fire needs fuel," Eleazar said, stepping closer. As a Lycan, he possessed the ability to project his own calm emotions onto her, acting as a cooling balm to her rising temperature. "The neighboring packs are gathering. They hold the military force in high regard, and they see your Sigma pack as a threat to the bloodline inheritance they hold dear." Ziva stood up, her violet eyes flashing with a light that suggested a unique identity within her wolf. "Let them come. They think because I am a Sigma, I am unintelligent and weak." She walked toward the balcony, looking out over the public place where her new pack members gathered to train in martial arts. "They do not know that a Sigma can run fast in both human and wolf form, or that my bite is a wound they cannot heal." "Alpha Barak was just the beginning," a voice called out from the doorway. It was Jethro, a Gamma who had overseen the majority of the pack's hunts before the siege. He bowed his head, showing a submissive behavior that would have been unthinkable weeks ago. "Our scouts report that a rogue pack is forming in the north. They are being led by Malachi." Ziva's grip on the stone railing tightened. "So, my former alpha has become the very thing he hunted. A rogue who kills for vengeance." It was a heavy punishment to be cast out, and it seemed Malachi had chosen the path of the villain. "He is telling the other packs that you are using hypnotic pheromones to turn warriors into sex workers and slaves," Jethro added, his voice trembling. "He projects his own darkness onto me," Ziva said, turning back to Eleazar. "He knows that in some settings, the Omega is the equivalence of a slave, and he wants the world to believe I have simply swapped the roles." Eleazar stepped into the light, his golden eyes narrowing. "Lycans retain human memories and experiences even in wolf form. I remember every alpha who thought they could rule through fear alone. They all end the same way." He looked at Ziva with an intensity that made her wolf stir within her. "Will you meet him as a queen or as an executioner?" Ziva looked at her hands, which were now steady despite the fever. She knew that having her wolf wake up meant she was now a protector of the pack, a warrior they would admire and respect. "I will meet him as the woman he thought he could break," Ziva replied, her voice carrying through the mind link to every wolf in the vicinity. "Then we prepare for a war of the bloodlines," Eleazar stated. "Do you smell that, Eleazar? It is the scent of wet fur and old hatred," Ziva said, her voice barely a whisper against the wind. They stood at the northern boundary of the territory. This was where the dense forest became the lawless land of the rogues. Ziva felt the ache of the mate bond in her chest, a sacred pull designated by the moon goddess that made her feel more grounded despite the fever still humming in her blood. "Malachi is close," Eleazar replied, his golden eyes scanning the tree line. As a Lycan, he could project his own calm onto her, helping her manage the high temperature and pain of her Sigma heat cycle. "He is gathering those who were cast out of their packs, but he is leading them with a lie." Ziva stepped forward, her speed in human form allowing her to move like a shadow across the uneven ground. She saw movement in the brush. A group of wolves emerged, but they weren't shifting. They carried weapons made of silver, designed to weaken any opponent they faced. "You came back to the border, Sigma," a voice called out. It was Malachi. He looked ragged, his eyes bloodshot. He had lost the military force he once held in high regard, but he had replaced it with the desperate energy of a rogue villain. "The other alphas are listening to me now. They won't let a defective girl lead a pack." "You are a rogue now, Malachi," Ziva said, her voice amplified by her mind link so it echoed in the minds of everyone present. "You have no law to protect you, yet you stand here and threaten a sovereign pack." "I am a warrior," Malachi roared. "And you are just a Sigma who uses a hypnotic effect to hide your weakness." Ziva didn't argue. She shifted. It wasn't the massive, terrifying transformation of a Lycan, but a sleek, fast wolf form. Her fur had a unique color that suggested a powerful identity, glowing slightly in the moonlight. She blurred toward him, her movements more serene and fluid than his panicked lunges. Before he could swing his silver blade, Ziva was on him. She didn't go for the throat. She bit down on his shoulder, her teeth sinking deep into the muscle. Malachi screamed. He knew a Sigma's bite was difficult for any werewolf to heal, even with their natural abilities. She jumped back, shifting back to her human form with a grace that left the other rogues frozen in place. "The next time you try to cross my border," Ziva said, her violet eyes burning with a unique elemental intensity, "I won't stop at your shoulder." Eleazar stepped beside her, his presence alone enough to make the other rogues retreat into the shadows. "He is broken, Ziva. The news of this defeat will reach the other packs before dawn." Ziva wiped a drop of blood from her lip. "Good. Let them know that the old hierarchy is dead. We are writing a new story now." "Do you truly think a Sigma's bite is the only thing that leaves a scar, Eleazar?" Ziva asked, staring at the map spread across the heavy stone table. The heat in her blood was finally receding as her 7-day cycle came to an end. She felt a new clarity, a sharp focus that came from her wolf finally being fully awake and integrated into her identity. "I think you have made a permanent enemy of the old world, Ziva," Eleazar replied. He stood by the window, his Lycan senses allowing him to hear the heartbeat of the pack members training in the public place below. "Malachi is no longer just a rogue. He is a martyr for the alphas who fear the change you represent." A sharp knock at the door interrupted them. Jethro, the Gamma, entered with a grim expression. In his hand, he held a small purple flower that looked wilted and dark. "Our food stores were not just looted, Ziva," Jethro said, placing the flower on the table. "They were laced with wolfsbane." Ziva did not touch the plant. She knew that wolfsbane was a poisonous substance that could kill or severely weaken even the strongest warrior. "He is not trying to fight us with martial arts anymore. He is trying to rot us from the inside." "There is more," Jethro continued. A shipment of silver concentration spray was intercepted near the southern bridge. It was meant for the Omega quarters. Ziva felt a surge of cold fury. The class hierarchy of a pack usually meant the Alpha protected the welfare of the pack members as family, but Malachi was willing to slaughter the common people, the Omegas, just to reclaim his throne. "He knows our wolves heal us from standard wounds, but silver and wolfsbane take that away," Ziva noted. She looked at Eleazar. "He is using the military tactics he held in high regard to commit a massacre." "Then we must change the game," Eleazar said, his golden eyes flashing. "Lycans possess unique hybrid abilities, like communicating telepathically over long distances. I can alert the neighboring Lycan territories that Malachi is using prohibited toxins. Even among alphas, wolfsbane is a coward's weapon." Ziva shook her head. "If you call in the Lycans, I am just a queen who needs a king to save her. No, we will use the rogues." "The rogues?" Jethro asked, his voice full of the submissive behavior typical of a lower rank facing a bold alpha decision. "Rogues are often deemed a threat because they don't belong to a regular pack. But many are just lone wolves who want to live in peace. They know the dark alleys and the hidden paths where Malachi is hiding his toxins." Ziva stood tall, her violet eyes reflecting the unique fur pattern of her inner wolf. "Jethro, gather the rogues we captured. Tell them they are no longer prisoners. They are my eyes and ears. If they find the wolfsbane source, they earn their place in the Sigma pack. And if they run?" Jethro asked. Ziva's voice turned low and hypnotic, the pheromones still humming with a trace of power. Tell them my bite is still waiting for those who betray the hand that feeds them. Do you trust a wolf who has lived without a law? Or do you trust the hunger that drives them? Ziva asked, her eyes fixed on the line of rogues standing in the shadows of the training hall. She paced before them, her footsteps silent on the stone. These were the wolves who didn't belong to any regular pack. Some were lone wolves who just wanted to live on their own, while others were the kind who might kill for vengeance. They were not protected by any laws, and that made them the perfect ghosts for her mission. I am not asking for your loyalty to a bloodline, Ziva said, her voice projecting a calm authority. I am asking you to find the wolfsbane that Malachi is using to poison the Omegas, the common people of this land. If you succeed, you are no longer outcast. You become the eyes of the Sigma pack. A tall rogue with a jagged scar across his muzzle stepped forward. And if we find the Alpha King's stores? He has silver bombs and silver bullets. We are not immune to silver like some genetic mutations. You will not fight him, Ziva commanded, her violet eyes glowing. You will mark the location and return. I am the one who will deal with the silver. Eleazar stood by the heavy oak doors, his presence reminding everyone that a Lycan is the king of alphas. He possessed the ability to project his emotions, and right now, he was radiating a sense of cold, unwavering focus that kept the rogues from shifting in agitation. The moon goddess may designate a mate bond, but she also gives us the will to choose our path, Eleazar said, his voice dropping an octave. Ziva has chosen to give you a path. Do not be the puppets of a fallen alpha. One by one the rogues bowed. They knew that when wolves are classified as rogues, they can be killed easily. Ziva was offering them the one thing they lacked. A pack to call family. We will find the poison, Queen Ziva, the scarred rogue promised before they melted into the night like smoke. Ziva turned to Eleazar as the hall emptied. The heat of her cycle had finally faded, leaving her with a sharp, cold clarity. Malachi thinks he can use the military force he holds in high regard to crush us. He doesn't realize that a pack is only as strong as its lowest rank. He is desperate, Eleazar noted, walking toward her. He knows that Lycans retain human memories and strategies. He is trying to act before I can coordinate a hunt with other Lycans. Ziva looked at the map. He is hiding in the old silver mines. It is the only place where the natural silver concentration will weaken our wolves just by standing near the walls. Then it is a trap, Eleazar said. It is a trap he expects a warrior to walk into, Ziva replied, a dangerous smile touching her lips. He doesn't realize that a Sigma is more than just a wolf. We are the masters of the mind link. If we enter those mines, Ziva, we enter his grave or ours, Eleazar stated. Do you feel the air turning cold, Eleazar? Or is the silver already leaching the life from our bones? Ziva asked, her voice tight as they stepped into the mouth of the abandoned mine. The walls of the tunnel shimmered with natural silver, a substance that weakens all wolves. Even though Ziva was nearly 18 and her wolf was fully awake, the high concentration of the metal made her feel as though her strength was being drained away. Beside her, Eleazar's golden eyes were dimming, his Lycan power suppressed by the very earth around them. It is a silver concentration designed to torture us, Eleazar replied, his breathing heavy. Malachi knows that while we are in this mine, we cannot remain in wolf form for long. He is trying to force us to fight as humans, where he thinks his military training gives him the edge. Ziva adjusted the heavy cloak around her shoulders. She knew that some wolves were immune to silver due to genetic mutation, but she was not one of them. However, she was a Sigma, and she had spent her life learning to survive when she was small and weak. He forgets that werewolves admire and respect warriors, but a true warrior knows when to use a mind link instead of a blade, Ziva said, closing her eyes to focus her thoughts. Suddenly, the sound of a silver bomb detonating echoed through the tunnels. A cloud of metallic dust filled the air, and from the shadows Malachi emerged. He held a crossbow loaded with silver bullets, his face twisted with the desperate hunger of a rogue who had lost everything. You walked right into the trap, Sigma, Malachi jeered, his voice bouncing off the silver-lined walls. In here your hypnotic pheromones are dulled by the scent of wolfsbane, and your Lycan King is just a man in the dark. Ziva felt the wolfsbane in the air, a poisonous substance that can kill or weaken a wolf. She felt her knees buckle, but she didn't fall. She used her unique Sigma ability to talk her way out of threatening situations, her voice carrying a hypnotic effect even through her exhaustion. "You think this mine is your fortress, Malachi," Ziva whispered, her voice amplified by the tunnel's acoustics. "But you are the one trapped in a room made of the very thing you fear." "Enough talk," Malachi roared, leveling the crossbow. "Now Jethro," Ziva commanded through the mind link. From the crevices in the ceiling, the rogues she had sent as scouts dropped down. They weren't shifting. They were using the martial arts they had practiced in the public place to disarm Malachi's men. Because they were rogues who had lived on the streets, they were used to fending for themselves without the protection of a pack. Ziva blurred forward, her Sigma speed still functioning despite the silver. She didn't use a weapon. She lunged and bit down on Malachi's wrist, her difficult-to-heal bite forcing him to drop the silver weapon. "You are no longer the alpha of anything," Ziva said, standing over him as he gasped in pain. "If you kill me, you are no better than a rogue murderer," Malachi hissed. "Do you really believe death is the only way to end a monster, Malachi? Or is it just the easiest way to forget one?" Ziva asked, her voice echoing off the silver-veined walls of the mine. She stood over the fallen alpha, her violet eyes glowing with a calm that terrified him more than rage ever could. Malachi lay in the dust, clutching his wrist where Ziva's bite had marked him. The silver concentration in the air continued to weaken him, making it impossible for him to shift back into the warrior form he held in such high regard. "Kill me," Malachi hissed, his voice cracking. "End the line of the Karen Alpha. That is the way of the pack." "The way of the pack is dead," Ziva replied, her tone as cold as the silver around them. "I am a Sigma. I was born to be meager, poor and bullied. You cast me out because you thought my wolf was a defect. But it is my wolf that allows me to see you for what you truly are. A man afraid of his own shadow." Eleazar stepped forward, his golden eyes scanning the mine. As a Lycan, he could project his emotions, and right now he was radiating a sense of absolute judgment. A Lycan king knows that the moon goddess blesses those who protect the weak, not those who exploit them. Ziva turned to the rogues who had helped her. They were werewolves who had lived without protection, often gathered in groups to survive. "You helped me today because you wanted a place to belong. You wanted to be more than just a threat to the regular packs." She looked back at Malachi. "I will not kill you. That would be too merciful. Instead, I am using the very law you used against me." "What law?" Malachi whispered. "The law of the rogue," Ziva stated. "You are hereby stripped of your name and your rank. You will live as a lone wolf, unprotected by any law, easily killed by any who find you. But I am adding a new condition. Your wound will never heal, and every time you look at it, you will remember the Sigma you thought was weak." Jethro and the other warriors stepped aside as Ziva signaled for Malachi to be dragged to the mine's entrance. The former alpha was cast out into the forest, a heavy punishment for a man who believed in bloodline inheritance. "The mine is cleared of the wolfsbane," Eleazar noted, his hand resting on Ziva's shoulder. "But your fever is returning. The 7 days of your cycle are not yet finished." Ziva leaned into the mate bond, feeling the ache for her destined partner. "I am fine, Eleazar. We have work to do. We have a pack to lead, and we must teach them that a Sigma's bite is not a defect, it is a promise." "And what promise is that, Ziva?" Eleazar asked, his eyes full of admiration for his mate. "That the lowest rank will never be silenced again," Ziva declared. "Do you believe the silence of the forest is a sign of peace, Eleazar? Or is the world just holding its breath before it screams?" Ziva asked, her eyes fixed on the horizon where the sun began to dip below the mountain peaks. She stood on the high balcony of the pack house, her fever finally broken as the 7 days of her Sigma cycle came to an end. She felt a strange new stillness in her blood, a clarity that allowed her to hear the heartbeat of the pack below. The warriors were gathered in the public place, practicing martial arts to prepare for threats from outside the pack. "The other alphas are not silent because they are at peace, Ziva," Eleazar replied, his voice a low vibration that seemed to calm the air around her. He used his Lycan ability to project a sense of stability, a unique gift that influenced those nearby. "They are silent because they are afraid. They have seen a Sigma cast out a dominant alpha and command an army of rogues. Ziva adjusted the heavy cloak around her shoulders. She knew that in the strict and fixed class hierarchy of the werewolves, she was supposed to be the lowest rank, equivalent to a slave in some settings. Yet here she was, reigning over a territory as an alpha would. They believe in bloodline inheritance, Ziva said, her voice amplified by her inner wolf strength. They think that because Malachi's son would have been an alpha, his exile has broken a sacred law. They do not understand that the moon goddess designated a different path for me. There is word from the south, a new voice interrupted. It was Gavriel, a young Epsilon who had shown natural fighting ability and intelligence since birth. He bowed his head with the submissive behavior expected in the presence of a Lycan king. A Lycan council is being called. They want to discuss the Sigma Queen and her tie to the King of Alphas. Ziva felt a sharp ache in her chest, the physical pull of the mate bond that made her yearn for Eleazar. She knew that if both agreed, they would be mates for life, the equivalent of husband and wife without divorce. But she also knew that a Lycan king was superior even to Alphas, and the council would likely view her as a defect. Let them call their council, Ziva said, her violet eyes glowing with a fire-bonded intensity. I will not be judged by men who hide behind silver walls and ancient traditions. They will bring silver bombs and silver bullets to test your strength, Ziva, Eleazar warned, his golden eyes filled with a complex awareness of the memories and strategies Lycans retain. Ziva turned to him, her expression hardening into the mask of a warrior. Then I will show them that a Sigma's hypnotic voice can reach even the coldest heart, and my bite can mark even a king. If they demand you kneel to their laws, what will your answer be? Eleazar asked. Do you intend to walk into a room of kings with your head held high, Ziva? Or is that violet glow in your eyes a warning of the fire to come? Eleazar asked, his voice low as their carriage crossed the southern border. Ziva adjusted the silver-threaded silk of her gown. She was no longer the girl in the mud. She was a sovereign. I am a child of the moon goddess Eleazar. If they wanted a puppet, they should have summoned an Omega who still believes she is a slave. The carriage stopped before a massive stone cathedral. This was the seat of the Lycan Council, the kings of Alphas. These were beings who did not rely solely on pack hierarchy, but possessed the ability to project their emotions onto others. As Ziva stepped out, she felt a heavy wave of judgment wash over her. A cold, projecting frost from the Lycans watching from the balcony. Lycans retain human memories and experiences even in wolf form, Eleazar whispered, stepping to her side. They will remember every law you have broken by leading the Karen pack. They entered the central hall. 5 Lycan kings sat on elevated thrones. Unlike standard wolves who shift during the full moon, these creatures could change their form in response to their emotions. One king, whose eyes burned like embers, looked down at Ziva. You are the Sigma who commands rogues, the king boomed. You have cast out a bloodline alpha and taken a mate bond with the king of alphas. You are a defect that has become a disease. Ziva felt the hypnotic hum in her blood begin to rise. She did not use her voice to soothe them. She used it to command the space. I am the consequence of a rigid hierarchy that forgot how to protect its own. You call me a defect. Yet I saved a pack that your pure alphas were prepared to see slaughtered. She speaks with the arrogance of a warrior, another king noted, his fur-lined cloak shifting. But can she withstand the elemental bond of a true Lycan? The fire-bonded king stood up. The air in the room began to sizzle, his emotional state causing a partial shift into a larger, fearsome creature. He projected a wave of pure terror toward her. Ziva didn't flinch. She used her unique Sigma speed to close the distance between her and the throne before the guards could react. She looked up at the king, her violet eyes reflecting his flames. You project fear because you are afraid of a world where bloodlines don't matter, Ziva said, her voice dropping to that hypnotic frequency that could make anyone do what she wanted. But I am not here to take your thrones. I am here to tell you that the Sigma pack is not a disease. It is the cure. The king paused, his flames flickering as her hypnotic pheromones reached the dais. And if we refuse to recognize your pack? The king asked. Do you believe a title carved in stone is worth more than a heart forged in the fire of exile, King Kalen? Ziva asked, her voice steady as she looked up at the fire-bonded Lycan. The air in the cathedral grew heavy with the king's emotional projection, a unique Lycan ability that could influence anyone nearby. Kalen leaned forward, his eyes burning with an elemental bond to fire that seemed to heat the very stones of the hall. If we refuse to recognize you, Ziva, your pack becomes a rogue pack. You will be deemed a threat to the regular werewolf pack and hunted as a villain. Ziva felt the heat from the king, but she did not step back. She knew that Lycans are more complex and aware than standard wolves, retaining human memories even in their shifted states. You would hunt the only pack that has successfully integrated rogues into a military force? She challenged, her violet eyes flashing. A military force must have a leader who is more than a whisper, Kalen roared. He stood, his emotional state causing a partial shift into a larger, more fearsome creature. If you wish for recognition, you must endure the trial of the moon. You must face a warrior of our choosing without the help of your Lycan King mate. Eleazar moved to protest, his golden eyes glowing, but Ziva raised a hand. She knew the mate bond made them ache for each other, but she also knew she could not be a puppet of destiny. I accept, Ziva said, her voice dropping to that hypnotic frequency that could cause others to do as she wished. But if I win, you will not just recognize my pack. You will declare the Sigma rank equal to the Alpha in the eyes of the moon goddess. The hall fell into a stunned silence. The class hierarchy of the werewolves was strict and fixed. To suggest a Sigma, often considered unintelligent and weak, could be equal to an Alpha was heresy. Then you shall face Gavriel, Kalen declared, pointing to a massive warrior standing near the pillars. Gavriel was a beta, a second-in-command known for being a powerful warrior. They moved to the center of the hall, a public place designated for such trials. Gavriel did not wait. He shifted into a powerful wolf, his fur a dark, intimidating gray. He relied on instinct and pack hierarchy, lunging at Ziva with a growl that shook the windows. Ziva did not shift. She used her Sigma speed to blur past his first strike. She knew she could not win with brute strength, but a Sigma's bite is difficult for other werewolves to heal from. Is this the best the superior bloodline has to offer? Ziva taunted, her voice echoing through their mind link. Gavriel turned, his eyes red with fury. He lunged again, but Ziva was ready. She used her hypnotic voice to command a split second of hesitation in his mind. In that moment she struck, her teeth sinking deep into his front leg. The beta wolf collapsed, a pained whimper escaping his throat. The wound would not heal as it should. Ziva stood over him, her violet eyes fixed on the Lycan Council. Recognition is not given, Ziva said, wiping a streak of blood from her jaw. It is taken. Do you intend to burn the world down just to keep your seat on a throne of embers, Kalen? Ziva asked, her voice echoing as she stepped away from the defeated beta. Gavriel, the warrior she had just bested, was being helped away by other warriors who looked at Ziva with a mix of terror and begrudging respect. The hall was silent, the air still thick with the fire-bonded king's emotional projection. You have won a duel against a beta Sigma, but you have not won the hearts of the Lycan kings, Kalen stated, his larger and more fearsome wolf-like form beginning to recede as he forced himself back into a human shape. You are a child of the moon goddess, but you are still a wolf who broke the hierarchy. I didn't break it, Ziva replied, her violet eyes scanning the other four kings on their thrones. I outgrew it. You believe in bloodline inheritance, that an alpha's son will always be an alpha. She pointed to the marks of silver on the floor from previous trials. But your bloodlines failed when the rogues attacked. It was the meager Sigma who stood between your pups and a silver blade. Eleazar stepped forward, his golden eyes glowing with the human memories and experiences that Lycans retain even in their shifted states. The trial is over, Kalen. The moon goddess has spoken through the victory of my mate. The mate bond between them hummed, a sacred connection that made them ache for one another. Kalen narrowed his eyes. Very well. The Sigma pack will be recognized as a sovereign territory. You are no longer rogues. He sat back on his throne, but his voice turned dark. However, the law of the pack is independent. We will not help you when the North Alphas come to reclaim the land you stole from Malachi. I don't need your help, Ziva said, turning her back on the council. I have my own military force. As they walked out of the cathedral, the cool night air hit Ziva's face. She felt her wolf within her strong and unique, its identity fully forged in the fires of the council room. You just declared war on the entire North, Ziva, Eleazar said, walking beside her with the grace of a king of alphas. No, Ziva said, looking at the distant mountains where her pack waited. I just told them the price of admission has changed. And if they refuse to pay? Eleazar asked. Ziva stopped at the carriage door and looked back at the cathedral. Then they can learn how hard it is to heal from a Sigma's bite. Do you believe the frost on the windows is a gift from the season, Eleazar? Or is the North simply marking its territory? Ziva asked, her breath misting in the freezing morning air. She stood at the window of the pack house, watching the first snow fall over the public place where her warriors gathered every day to train in martial arts. The victory at the Lycan Council felt like a distant dream now that the reality of her independence had set in. Each pack was independent and reigned by an alpha, but the North alphas were notorious for their strict and fixed class hierarchy. The North does not give gifts, Ziva, Eleazar replied, his golden eyes scanning the treeline. As a Lycan, he possessed the ability to project his emotions, and right now he was radiating a sense of guarded alertness. They believe in bloodline inheritance with a fervor that borders on madness. To them, a Sigma leading a pack is a defect that must be pruned. A sharp howl cut through the wind. It wasn't the sound of a lone wolf. It was the coordinated cry of a military force. Jethro, the Gamma who oversaw the majority of hunts, burst into the room. He showed dominant behavior, but his eyes were wide with a rare flicker of fear. The North Alphas have arrived, Ziva, Jethro reported, bowing his head in the submissive behavior expected in the pack's uppermost level of dominance. They have brought silver bombs and silver weapons. They aren't here to talk. Ziva felt the familiar spark of her wolf waking up, its unique strength determining her identity as a warrior. She knew that werewolves admire and respect warriors, and she would have to be the most capable warrior to lead. She grabbed her cloak, her violet eyes glowing with an intensity that suggested a unique fur color and pattern once she shifted. Eleazar, stay with the Omegas, Ziva commanded, referring to the common people and the lowest rank who were the most vulnerable. They will try to use silver concentration to weaken the healers. You cannot face an entire military force alone, Eleazar argued, his Lycan form shifting slightly in response to his protective emotions. Ziva didn't slow down. She used her Sigma speed to reach the courtyard in seconds. She stood before the gates as a massive white wolf, a North Alpha, stepped into the light. He carried himself with the pride of a king of alphas. I am Alpha Kale of the Frostbite Pack. The white wolf growled through the mind link. We do not recognize the laws of a defect. We are here to reclaim what belongs to the bloodline. Ziva looked at the silver bullets glinting in the hands of his warriors. She felt the mate bond in her chest ache, a sacred connection designated by the moon goddess that made her want to protect her people at any cost. You talk of bloodlines while you carry silver to kill your own kind, Ziva said, her voice dropping to that hypnotic frequency that could influence the weak-minded. In my pack we value strength, not just birthright. Then let us see if a Sigma's bite can pierce a North Alpha's hide, Kale roared, lunging forward. Ziva didn't shift into a massive wolf. She stayed in her human form, utilizing her agility and the hypnotic effect of her pheromones to create a split second of hesitation in the alpha's mind. As he sailed past her, she lunged, her teeth sinking into his flank, a bite difficult for any werewolf to heal. The North may bring the winter, Kale, Ziva whispered, but I am the fire that will melt your crown. Do you think the red on the snow is a sign of your victory, Kale, or just the beginning of your pack's debt? Ziva asked, her breath rising in a steady plume as she stood over the wounded alpha. Kale lay on the frozen ground, his white fur stained by the wound she had delivered. A Sigma's bite is difficult for other werewolves to heal from, and his natural regeneration was failing him in the biting cold. Around them, the frostbite warriors hesitated. They were a military force that held strength in high regard, and they had just seen their leader dropped by a woman they considered a defect. You used the tricks of a rogue, Kale hissed through the mind link, his voice trembling with the pain of the bite. There is no honor in a hypnotic voice that bends a warrior's will. Honor didn't save the Omegas you tried to poison with wolfsbane, Ziva replied, her voice dropping to that hypnotic frequency that influenced those nearby. She looked at the North Alpha's silver weapons. Werewolves at war create silver bombs and silver bullets to destroy their opponents, and Kale had brought enough to level her village. Every pack is independent and reigned by an alpha, but you have brought silver into a home that belongs to the moon goddess. Eleazar stepped forward from the shadows of the gate. As a Lycan, he possessed the ability to project his emotions onto others, and right now, he was radiating a sense of cold, crushing authority that made the frostbite warriors lower their silver-tipped spears. A Lycan king retains human memories and strategies even in wolf form, Eleazar said, his golden eyes fixed on Kale. I remember the last time a North Alpha tried to break the sacred laws of the mate bond. It did not end with a treaty. Ziva felt the mate bond ache in her chest, a physical pulling that designated Eleazar as her life partner. But she kept her focus on the battlefield. She was an alpha in all but name, responsible for training her people and protecting them from outside threats. Take your alpha and leave, Ziva commanded the North warriors. If you stay, you will learn that my pack is not made of the weak. We are made of those who survived your hierarchy. The frostbite warriors gathered their fallen leader. They were gregarious creatures, but today they moved with the shame of the defeated. As they retreated into the tree, Jethro the Gamma approached Ziva with a look of awe. They will be back with more silver concentration, Ziva, Jethro warned, referring to the heavy metal that weakens a wolf's strength. Let them come, Ziva said, her violet eyes glowing with a unique identity. We have silver of our own now. And what will you do with it? Eleazar asked, his hand resting on her shoulder. Ziva looked at the discarded silver bullets on the ground. I'm going to show them that a Sigma can run fast in both forms, and I'm going to run right over their traditions. Do you believe a wolf who offers you a gift with one hand while the other hides a silver blade is seeking peace? Eleazar. Or just a better angle for the strike? Ziva asked, staring at the ornate chest left at the edge of the Sigma territory. The North Alphas had retreated, but in their place came an envoy from a southern pack. The messenger had left this offering, claiming it was an apology for the Frostbite pack's aggression. Ziva felt the mate bond in her chest, a sacred pull designated by the moon goddess that made her lean into Eleazar's steady presence. As a Lycan, he projected a calming aura that shielded her from the lingering sting of the silver concentration still in the air. Every pack is independent like a peakies and reigned by an alpha, but they all share the same hunger for power, Eleazar warned. Lycans possess unique hybrid abilities, including heightened senses that tell me this wood smells of more than just cedar. Ziva used her Sigma speed to circle the chest. They think because I was born a Sigma, I am unintelligent and weak. She signaled Jethro, her Gamma, to open it. They do not realize that while wolves operate on instinct, I have learned to see the traps they set for the meager. As the lid creaked open, it didn't reveal gold or silk. Instead, a cloud of dark dust billowed out. Wolfsbane, Jethro shouted, shifting partially to protect his face. The poisonous substance filled the room, a toxin that can kill or weaken even the strongest warrior. Ziva didn't panic. She knew werewolves don't necessarily need medicine to heal because their wolves heal them, but Wolfsbane was different. It stripped that power away. Seal the vents, Ziva commanded, her voice amplified by the hypnotic frequency of her inner wolf. They are trying to subdue us before the next full moon. This was not an apology, Eleazar growled, his golden eyes flashing as he projected a shield of pure emotional focus to keep the Omegas in the hallway from inhaling the poison. This is treason. Ziva looked at the violet marks on her own skin, the unique pattern of her Sigma identity glowing with a fierce light. They hold the military force in high regard, and they think silver bombs and poison make them superior. She turned to the messenger who was still being held in the courtyard. If they want to play with poison, we will show them that a Sigma's bite is the only toxin they should truly fear. What is your command, Ziva? Eleazar asked, sensing the shift in her heart. Ziva walked toward the balcony, looking down at the warriors gathered to train in martial arts. We are not sending a letter in return. We are sending the messenger back with a mark that will never heal. Do you think he will carry my words back as clearly as he carries my scent, Eleazar? Or will his fear choke the message before he reaches his alpha? Ziva asked, her eyes narrowing as she watched the trembling messenger in the center of the hall. The air was still thick with the lingering bitterness of Wolfsbane, a poisonous substance that can kill or weaken even the strongest wolf. Ziva stood tall, her fever long gone, replaced by a cold, radiating authority that even the Lycan King beside her respected. Eleazar used his Lycan ability to project a sense of crushing gravity onto the messenger, making the man's knees buckle against the stone floor. The southern packs are gregarious and physically strong, Ziva, but they are led by alphas who only understand the language of the military force they hold in high regard, Eleazar said. He adjusted his stance, his golden eyes reflecting the human memories and strategies he retained even in this tense moment. If you send him back unmarked, they will see it as a sign that the Sigma is as meager and weak as the stories claim. Ziva walked down from the dais, her movements fluid and fast, a trait of her Sigma nature. They believe in bloodline inheritance, thinking an alpha's son is the only one fit to lead, she said, her voice dropping to that hypnotic frequency that could make a person do whatever she wanted. She grabbed the messenger's chin, forcing him to look into her glowing violet eyes. Tell your alpha that the moon goddess did not make me a puppet. The messenger tried to speak, but his voice was a mere rasp. He was an Omega, the lowest rank in his pack, and he had been sent as a sacrificial lamb to deliver the poison. I will not kill you, for you were only the tool of a coward, Ziva whispered, her voice carrying through the mind link so every guard in the hall could hear her. But I will give you a mark that will remind your alpha of the price of treason. Without a shift, Ziva lunged with the speed she possessed in both human and wolf form. She bit deep into the messenger's forearm, her teeth sinking into the bone. The man shrieked, for a Sigma's bite is difficult for other werewolves to heal from, regardless of their natural abilities. Go, Ziva commanded, releasing him. Tell them that if they send another gift of wolfsbane, I will not send a messenger back. I will come myself to collect the debt. As the Omega stumbled out of the hall, clutching his bleeding arm, Jethro the Gamma stepped forward. Ziva, the other packs will see this as a declaration of war. They believe the mate bond is sacred, but they will argue that a Lycan King has been bewitched by a defective female. Let them argue, Ziva said, turning to Eleazar. The moon goddess gave me a voice to lead and a bite to punish. I am finished asking for their permission to exist. Do you believe the council will see this blood on my hands as a stain, Eleazar, or as the ink that writes a new law for our kind? Ziva asked, staring at the darkening horizon from the pack's military training grounds. She stood among her warriors, who were gathered in a public place to train in martial arts and prepare for the potential threat from outside the pack. The messenger had long since fled, carrying the mark of her bite, a wound difficult for any werewolf to heal. Beside her, Eleazar remained silent, his golden eyes reflecting the complex awareness and human memories that Lycans retain even in their shifted states. The council is platonic and rigid in its view of our hierarchy, Ziva, Eleazar finally replied, his voice a low vibration that projected a sense of calm onto the nearby warriors. They believe in bloodline inheritance, the idea that an alpha's son must be an alpha, and an omega's daughter must remain an omega. By elevating yourself, you have challenged the very foundation of their world. Ziva adjusted the silver-threaded wrap around her shoulders, aware that silver usually weakens her kind. I have spent my life as a Sigma, seen as meager and unintelligent. But the moon goddess blessed me with a wolf that is strong and unique. If the council cannot accept that a Sigma can run fast in both human and wolf form to protect her people, then they are the ones who are defective. They are gathering a military force, Ziva, Eleazar warned, his expression hardening. Lycans are the kings of alphas, and they do not take kindly to a queen who does not belong to a regular pack hierarchy. Ziva turned to him, the mate bond in her chest aching with a sacred pull that designated them as pairs for life. You are the king of alphas, Eleazar. If they come for me, will you stand with your council, or will you stand with the mate the moon goddess chose for you? Eleazar reached out, his hand steady on her shoulder. Lycans can change their form in response to their emotional state. Right now, my only emotion is the need to protect my mate. I will not be a puppet to their ancient laws. Then we prepare for the final trial, Ziva stated, her violet eyes glowing. We will show them that a Sigma's heat cycle and her supposed defects were merely the forge for a new kind of leader. And what if they bring silver bombs and silver bullets to destroy us? Eleazar asked. Ziva looked at her warriors, the alphas, betas, and even the rogues who had found a home in her pack. Then we will show them that some wolves are immune to their weapons, and a pack united by choice is stronger than one united by blood. Do you hear the thunder of their march, Eleazar? Or is it just the sound of an old world trying to scream itself back into existence? Ziva asked, her fingers gripping the cold stone of the watchtower railing. On the horizon, a massive military force moved like a dark tide. The Lycan Council had not come alone. They had gathered the alphas of the southern packs, their silver weapons glinting under the pale moon. These were werewolves who held the military force in high regard, and they were bringing silver bombs and silver bullets to destroy what they could not understand. It is the sound of fear, Ziva, Eleazar replied, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in her chest. As a Lycan, his shifting patterns were tied to his emotions. Right now his body was larger, more fearsome, responding to the threat against his mate. They see our pack as a rogue pack, a threat to the regular werewolf society that must be pruned. Ziva looked down at her own people. The werewolves were gathered in the public place, not in a panic but in formation. She had trained them in martial arts to be prepared for this potential threat. Even the rogues, those who didn't belong to any regular pack, stood ready to defend the only home that had ever seen them as family. They will use silver concentration to weaken us, Ziva noted, her violet eyes glowing. They think that because werewolves at war rely on silver to subdue a wolf's strength, we will fall like Malachi did. But you are a Sigma, Ziva, Eleazar said, his golden eyes filled with the human memories and strategies that Lycans retain. You can run fast in both human and wolf form, and you have a bite that even a king cannot heal. Suddenly, the first silver bomb detonated at the tree line, releasing a cloud of metallic dust. Ziva felt the familiar sting in her lungs, the heavy metal trying to handcuff her wolf strength. Eleazar, projection, Ziva commanded. The Lycan King closed his eyes, utilizing his ability to project his emotions onto others. He radiated a wave of absolute, unshakable courage that hit their warriors like a physical shield, counteracting the fear the silver was meant to induce. I am the moon goddess child and I am blessed, Ziva whispered, the unique fur pattern of her inner wolf beginning to shimmer beneath her skin. She stepped off the tower, her sigma speed making her a blur of movement as she hit the ground running. She didn't need to be an alpha son to lead. She was a queen forged in the streets, and she was about to show the council that some defects are actually evolutions. If they want a villain, I will give them a legend, Ziva vowed. Do you believe the light of the moon goddess can penetrate a cloud of silver, Eleazar, or must we become the light ourselves? Ziva asked, her voice cutting through the metallic hiss of the silver concentration. The battlefield was a blur of gray dust and flashing steel. The Lycan Council's military force had detonated silver bombs, creating a heavy fog designed to subdue a wolf's strength and weaken their opponent's ability to remain in wolf form. Ziva could feel the heavy metal trying to handcuff her inner power. Beside her, Eleazar's larger and more fearsome Lycan form flickered, his emotional state shifting between rage and a protective need to guard his mate. The council believes in bloodline inheritance, that an alpha's son will always be an alpha. They think your sigma blood makes you meager and poor, Eleazar growled through the mind link. He projected a wave of calming serenity to shield his warriors from the panic of the silver storm. But they have never fought a wolf who had to learn to run fast just to survive. Ziva didn't wait for the fog to clear. She utilized her sigma speed, moving so fast in her human form that she was nearly invisible to the warriors relying on brute instinct. She knew that werewolves at war use silver bullets and weapons to destroy their opponents, but her small size made her a difficult target. You call me a defect? Ziva shouted, her voice reaching the ears of the high-ranking alphas through the hypnotic frequency of her pheromones. But while you hid behind your hierarchy, I was forged in the streets you threw me onto. She reached the front line of the southern alphas. Instead of a standard shift, she stayed low, her violet eyes glowing with a unique identity. She lunged at the lead beta, her teeth sinking into his shoulder. A sigma's bite is difficult for other werewolves to heal from, and the warrior collapsed, his natural healing suppressed by both the silver in the air and her lethal mark. Every pack is independent, reigned by an alpha, Ziva said, standing over the fallen warrior as the silver cloud began to thin. But today, the North and South will learn that the Sigma is the equivalence of a king when she fights for her family. She is a monster, an alpha cried out, leveling a silver-tipped spear. No, Eleazar's voice boomed as he stepped out of the mist, his golden eyes projecting a terrifying authority. She is the moon goddess child, blessed and finally awake. Do you truly believe a throne of gold is more stable than a foundation of scars, King Kalen? Ziva asked, her voice carrying across the silent, silver-stained battlefield. The air was still thick with the metallic scent of silver bombs, a heavy metal that continued to weaken the gathered wolves. The Lycan Council stood at the edge of the clearing, their eyes reflecting the human memories and strategies they retained even in this moment of chaos. Kalen, the fire-bonded king, stepped forward, his emotional state causing him to shift into a larger and more fearsome creature that emitted a terrifying warmth. You have wounded our warriors and defied our hierarchy, Ziva, Kalen roared, his voice projecting a wave of intense fear onto the nearby humans and animals. But a Sigma is still the lowest rank, and your pheromones cannot hypnotic affect the entire world forever. Ziva felt the mate bond in her chest ache, a sacred connection designated by the moon goddess that made her feel the weight of Eleazar's protective gaze. I do not need to hypnotic affect the world, Kalen, she said, her violet eyes glowing with a unique identity. I only need to show them that werewolves admire and respect warriors, and a warrior is defined by her choice to protect, not her birthright. Kalen lunged, his elemental bond to fire making him move like a streak of flame. Ziva did not shift into a massive wolf. She utilized her Sigma speed, running fast in her human form to avoid his lethal strike. She knew that Lycans are more complex and aware, but her unique speed was a defect they had never learned to counter. As Kalen prepared for a second lunging strike, Ziva used her voice, dropping it to that hypnotic frequency that could make a person do whatever she wanted. Stop, she commanded. The Lycan King froze for a split second, his emotional projection flickering. It was the only window she needed. Ziva blurred forward and bit down on his forearm, her teeth sinking deep into the muscle. She knew a Sigma's bite was difficult for other werewolves to heal from, even for a king of alphas. The moon goddess made us her children, but she did not make us slaves to your bloodline, Ziva whispered, releasing him as he collapsed in agony. Kalen looked at the wound, his fire-bonded entity replaced by the realization that his natural healing was failing. The Southern Alphas, who held the military force in high regard, looked at their fallen king and then at the Sigma who stood undefeated. If you want to keep your crown, Kalen, you will recognize the Sigma pack as the equals of the Lycans, Ziva stated. Do you believe the sun rises to reveal the damage we have done, Eleazar, or to show us the new world we have built? Ziva asked, her voice barely a whisper as the first golden light broke over the smoking battlefield. She stood at the center of the clearing, her chest heaving, her violet eyes still glowing with the power of her inner wolf. Around her, the silver fog was finally dissipating, revealing a landscape changed forever. King Kalen lay on the ground, his forearm marked by her bite, a wound that would remind him of the Sigma's strength every time he looked at it. The Southern Alphas and the Lycan Council warriors stood in silent rows, their silver weapons lowered in a gesture of submissive behavior. The sun rises because the moon goddess has blessed her children, Ziva, Eleazar replied, stepping to her side. He had shifted back into his human form, his golden eyes filled with the human memories and experiences that Lycans carry through every battle. He reached for her hand, and the mate bond between them flared with a sacred warmth, a connection for life that no decree could ever break. Ziva looked at her people. The Omegas, once seen as common people or slaves, stood tall beside the warriors. The rogues, once deemed a threat to the regular pack, were now the honored scouts of a new sovereign territory. She had taken a rigid and fixed class hierarchy and shattered it, proving that a wolf's strength is determined by her identity, not her birthright. Every pack is independent, but today we are a family, Ziva declared, her voice carrying through the mind link to every wolf on the field. She looked at the Lycan Council. You believe in bloodline inheritance, but I believe in the merit of the warrior. From this day forward, the Sigma pack will be the sanctuary for every wolf the world tried to discard. King Kalen struggled to his feet, his fire-bonded elemental energy flickering but no longer aggressive. He bowed his head, a sign of respect that echoed through the entire werewolf society. The Sigma Queen has spoken, he announced, his voice projecting a new, humbled emotion. The hierarchy is rewritten. Ziva leaned into Eleazar, the ache of the bond finally settling into a peaceful rhythm. She had run fast in both human and wolf form to reach this moment, and she was no longer a defect. She was a queen. And what will we do tomorrow, my queen? Eleazar whispered, his voice full of the love and preference that the moon goddess had intended. Ziva looked out over the vast, green valley of her territory, her heart finally at rest. Tomorrow we teach them how to live without chains, Ziva replied.